What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Ancient Wisdom, your weekly Pokemon TCG podcast. My name is Corey Roush. With me, as always, is DJ Keener. DJ, how are you today?
I'm living the dream, Corey. Love to do this. How you doing, man?
Doing good, doing good. Coming off my grind with Pika Control for the week.
So, how many games did
Not
you get
quite.
up to? That's the real question.
I got up to 60, so not quite the goal.
So, you're a filthy liar?
Yeah. I understand. Honestly, I did not budget enough time because I did not realize that 10 games in a day was going to be a good day.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So,
You didn't budget enough time to play 100 games with a deck that does basically nothing.
so honestly, it would not have been an issue if most of if I'm online and I realize the lock's over, like I just
Mhm.
concede, right? But a lot of people just didn't. The number of games that almost took the full timer, just like I
Yeah.
don't know if they were waiting for me to screw up but I'm like, my guy, I know you have 17 energy in the bin. I'm just Eldegossing you every single turn, and you're waiting until you draw your whole deck and then Marnie me 3 times. We don't have to do this.
Yeah.
We don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I don't think they get it is part of it.
Yeah,
Um, that there's it's deterministic. And the other part is that there's a lot of salt related to that sort of deck. People really don't like letting you have it.
that's true.
So,
But I wouldn't want to sit there and waste an extra 20 minutes just to show that I'm
no, that's the
salty. You
thing
know
that
what I mean?
always has always gotten me with those. I can't imagine just making somebody go through it so I can salt off. Like, bro, just get me out of the game if I don't want to be here.
Yeah. Um,
That's the version of the world I live in, but apparently not everybody.
yeah. So that I mean that I'm not exaggerating when I tell you out of the 60 games that probably happened 5 or 6 times, which probably cost me another. I would never have gotten to the 100, but I probably could have pushed
Yeah, I
70.
probably could have gotten a little bit further.
So, but yeah, that's we usually talk about what we played in the last week. That's what I've played in the last week. Um, Other than locals last week, we've been recording before locals. So last week at locals, I played a more like V focused Rayquaza box. I believe Rayquaza was still in there. It's been a week.
Yeah, you played
Um,
Rayquaza.
yeah, but it had like it had Zapdos V, it had Luminion, and it had the Raikou to take advantage of the Sky Steel Stone. And honestly, the stone itself never came up, but and that was just by the nature of what I played against.
Hmm.
Our locals is kind of a little bit different than the traditional format, but I was able to take advantage of Raikou and against a Vikavolt deck played by Boy Colt because he was never able to take KOs, and I was actually taking 1 to 2 shots. So
Right,
that was
right.
nice. How about
Yeah,
you?
yeah. I played the like amazing Reiko's Amazenta Lost Box we talked about at locals last week, and that was good. I like the deck. It we knew it was going to struggle against Gudra, and then I made a mistake against it, so learned a little bit there. And I don't think I need to change anything for that, but definitely cool to learn. And then I've been working with the Turbo Lost Box deck that top 32 to Liverpool. It's top 8 at a couple online events since then, and that's been really sweet. I'm sure I'll talk about that a little bit more when we go into kind of what we think we'd play, though I'm not convinced this is what I'd play at Orlando either. But I do like it. I like being aggressive and getting turn one Mirage Gates off occasionally, so that's a really sweet deck. It's sad because you probably could, like, you play the V's, so you could play the Sky Seal Stone, but just search a card is better normally in there. So,
Right?
like, yeah, I think that's my biggest problem with the Sky Seal. Like, most of the time, I probably would rather just have search a card.
Yeah, I'd have to. It would just have to be in a matchup. Like if you're if you have it's nice into Mew because like you're able to just completely skip
Well,
Roxanne.
yeah, yeah. So
But
there's
like
there's that
against other
line, or
decks,
like
it's just
the
like
right, right, and that sort of also leans in, like, you have to be able to one shot the Muse. So you have to be playing Drapion too, then, or else you don't get to skip Roxanne, and
yeah,
that's awkward also. Um, so yeah, I mean, there's specific decks and like decks with specific matchups and constructions where like I could see playing it, but it is really hard to justify that over just searching a card. I guess I find, like, in general, cutesy stuff like that. When I say cute, I mean like interesting ways to flip matchups are normally less relevant than cards that just like make sure you execute your game plan.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and that's just kind of where I'm at on those. And like the Sky Seal Stone is good, but the Forest Seal in like this deck, where it's just a lot of times you're like one search off of being able to get your 7 in the Lost Zone plus an attacker in your active, like, that just matters more.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's the same logic that like the next thing I really want to test is the Radiant Eternatus decks, and I'm like, well, if it's gonna be like a Lost Box deck with Radiant Eternatus, is there ever a world where it's better for me to and I don't know yet. I haven't tested it enough, but to slap down to Duraludons rather than just do the normal traditional single prize game plan of being a lost box deck where I'm
Right,
just more consistent
right,
because I'm not like, well, I prize my Eternatus, so that first like 4 turns of this game are just gonna be me just
right.
thumbing my something like it's just it's very it's weird. I think that it's like I mean, and this is probably different to any of our listeners or anyone we know that likes to play more of the gimmicky decks or the fun decks. That's not
Mhm.
like we like fun, but not like that. Like it's not like I don't want to like necessarily play something that I think is
Well,
worth
I'm
it.
not doing something cool. Well, I'm not often doing something cool for the sake of doing something cool. Like
That's what I mean.
there's got to
Yeah.
be a reason there. We have to have a reason that we think it's good, and all of that goes into it. And a lot of the times, like there's something you can justify there, but like Eternatus Lost Box has been, um, like it seems really cool, and I've liked the idea of it, but I'm just not really sure when or where like I would actually try to execute on that. I guess especially the biggest part was like Radiant Greninja is just really really good in those versions of the deck, both as like a setup card and as one of your best attackers. So I don't know, like giving that up to turn your Lost Box deck into like tech anti-meta attackers doesn't really get me going. Like, yeah, Duraludon VMAX and Flying Pikachu VMAX are really good, and Espeon can like lock some games out if you play that one too. But like, I just don't know that I see losing Eternatus just to play those is really worth it. And then the other downside is like this isn't like actual like Arcdura where the prize counts work out to the point where you have to make your opponent kill 2 Duraludon VMAXs. They're gonna have to like you have to play the Eternatus. You have to set up your comfies. They can just kill one of them and gust around you for prizes a lot of the time.
Yep.
Um, same with like a Pikachu. You have to leave, not have to, but you're almost definitely gonna have bench stuff, so you're susceptible to like escape rope boss type combos or whatever. Um, unlike in again like Arc Peak where you can lock out in those situations. So it's just like it kind of seems like you're just playing Eternatus to do it.
Mhm.
Um, I guess I'll follow up on that though with a deck that I've seen top 2 different online events. It could have been more, just 2 that I'm remembering off the top of my head, which is the Malamar Radiant Eternatus deck, Malamar Movie Max Eternatus. Trying to find the list right here that I was looking at, but
I just need to say
that's
it's funny that
sweet.
you brought it up. I almost texted you about it, and I was like, you know what? I'll surprise him with this on the pod in case he hasn't
I
heard it
figured
or
I
seen
would
it yet.
just wait. Yeah, so that was the exact same thing. I was gonna talk to you about it, and then I figured, we'll just talk about it on here. Might as well give it a little
Yeah,
bit. Now I'm struggling to find it, so that's annoying.
I'm looking as
Um,
well. So
but yeah, so this is doing the Radiant Eternatus thing. It's got just Malamar VMAX as the target for it. It's not playing anything cute. It doesn't have different like wall type guys or any other attackers. We're just trying to go Mew, get Malamar, and uh, start disrupting our opponent with it. And I think I found one that didn't top 8. This one got like 12th and something when 5 and 2 bubbled out. 5-1-1 made top cut. Um, so yeah, the list just has 4 Malamar VMAX, 4 the Celebration Mew, some Crobats, and a Radiant Eternatus. This is your Pokemon. And what you get to do with that is use the Mew to make sure you find the way to get your Eternatus into play. Whether that means digging through your deck to find Heavy Ball or just your, search cards. But then after that, on the second turn, you're gonna try to use Mew and like the discard draw type cards, Ultra Ball, Quick Ball, even like Trekking Shoes if you can put something into your discard with it, to use Dark Patch to set up your Malamar as quickly as possible, since you get a ton of dig there, which I think is like pretty reasonable. You have to get 2 Dark Patches. The Malamar's already on your bench. You want to play the switch cards to move the Mew around so you can use those to pivot the Malamar up. I don't know. This seems really sweet to me. And then like that late game turn where you go like you bring up the Malamar, right? You're attacking with it, grinding, whatever. They knock it out, and then you get to like Roxanne Path, Malamar take one of your last 2 cards. That's really good.
mm.
So this is one that I don't think is like necessarily gimmicky. I think this might actually have some legs to it.
Yeah, and it's Malamar's seen success before. It was like, I mean, it was last year whenever
Yeah,
it
yeah,
was before
right.
Palkia came out.
I
But
think
this
it
is not.
was right when we started playing. Malamar was kind of on the radar, and then Palkia sort of made that just not a thing anymore.
Yeah, but like this is a really cool concept, and it's kind of what like I think this really touches on what we were talking about with Radiant Eternatus, like back when we were previewing the set, that there was probably something that was it's easy to overlook because it seems gimmicky, but it does just enough,
Yeah.
and this does that. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
this is.
exactly. I mean, even outside of like just that, I mean, you play a Marnie or a Judge and attack with Malamar every turn.
I mean, that's really good. Like you're just you can be very disruptive.
Hmm.
So like that's very good against like the Lost Box style decks that really hate to be Marnied. Well, if you're playing
Right.
Marnies and Judges and ripping cards from their hands, you're doing that. Mew is a good card. Like I mean, we don't use it as often as since we've gotten the Lost Box engine, but Mew is still a good card, and in something like this, it can really just kind of
Yeah,
stall through
absolutely.
that beginning game. I don't know. I like
Well, and we're
this is
kind of
something on my list to try.
underselling too how much the Mew like it still is in the Vika decks.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's funny, kind of unrelated to this, but I saw a tweet about basically Vika being like the most universally panned deck to have not dominated a format, but like I mean, it's got the second best results in the format, basically.
People act
Um,
like it's a meme deck, and it's like
yeah, yeah, and it's I mean,
it's
it's a
won two regionals.
frustrating deck. It
Yeah,
is. It's funny because like it is just like maddeningly inconsistent. That's just part of the deck. It really is. That's not like a shot at it, but I mean, when you hit and when you hit your matchups, the deck doesn't lose.
yeah,
So like, I don't know. I think that no, Celebration Mew is really good. Celebration Mew is going to continue to be really good. That's like one of the biggest things that I want that I don't have yet from Crown Zenith is a set of those. Because that art A is sick and B that card's just gonna be good. It's gonna stay good. Losing Scoop Up Net sucks for it, same as the Comfy engine, but the Retreat Stadium will also help going forward, so that's cool. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I think like I would make some edits to this deck list, but honestly, just like conceptually, this is something that I really want to do, and I'm definitely going to check if the shop has Malamar VMAXs tonight, so I can finally do something with these or with this Eternatus that I have sitting in my box.
Yep, that makes sense. That makes sense. I kind of want to try something like this too. So I doubt that the shop will have 8 of them, but
Yeah, I think one of us, if we can put four together between the two of us, I think that's probably good enough. So we'll see. Maybe
well,
Colt has some of them hanging around too.
I'm also more prone to trade with people than you are too, so I can always make that
Yeah,
happen
yeah,
too.
that's fair.
I like our chances of
Definitely
finding
fair.
it eventually, and I want to try it. Like I want Eternatus to be a good card. I don't know if it actually
Yeah.
is,
Well, and I just
but
like I want to try new cards, I guess, and there's not many of them, but I want to play some different decks and do some different things. Like this isn't a Crown Zenith deck, but like the Turbo Mirage Gate style deck, funny enough, is actually a really old concept that finally got brought back around by somebody figuring out the right way to do it, I guess. But like that's what drew me to this, and that's it's not a Crown Zenith deck, but it is like a new deck, and that's
yeah,
just kind of like in the downtime between events what I want to do. I want to explore different things that we haven't tried yet, but at the same time not at the expense of playing a good deck.
yeah. I don't want to waste my time on nonsense because like I want to have some sort of value added.
Right,
Maybe we
right.
look at hobbies the wrong way, but that's the you and I are the same in
Yeah.
that regard, if nothing else.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say whether that's the right or wrong way, it is how we look at it.
Yep.
The downside here is that my TCG Live collection is not especially stacked, and it's easy to build like a couple decks. It's really hard to justify burning credits on 4 VMAXs that I want to meme with.
Yeah. I don't have Malamars on there either, so it's
I got some Crown Zenith codes. We'll see. I feel like the set is fat enough that I'm not going to get a lot of credits redeeming the stuff from my ETBs, but maybe I will.
yeah. You can always hope for the best, right?
Yeah,
So,
got a dream, right?
but yeah. So I think that's definitely one. I think like, did anything else really jump out at you as like a new deck to really dive into from the week, or was there anything else at all in that regard from online?
Something that we've talked about in the past. One of the bigger online tournaments. Not like a gigantic one, 60, 70 person, something like that, but Lost Zone Dialga with, though, in this case, the Celebrations Kyogre to close the game out after you do like your take an extra turn thing. So you're just playing like the Lost Box engine with a 2/2 Dialga line. They have like a Zacian V. You could play Zamazenta in there pretty realistically, I think. Um, and I think that's an interesting line too, because we've been kind of looking for metal options because we do like the Zamazenta. And this is a deck that like we've talked about before and has been reasonable before. You already kind of wanted to play Water Energies to Mirage Gate onto Radiant Greninja in there. So, I mean, this is something that you could easily convince me to give a try, especially since Metal Saucer won't be around for long. So our boy Dialga has a very limited lifespan.
Yeah.
I don't know what matchups that's good for. So like this is like a 2-2 Dialga line. Maybe you're supposed to play like this is so cringe. Like one Dialga V, two V stars, play your heavy ball and a Thornton. I,
That sounds like something I will never do, Dave. But I appreciate your
I
creativity
don't
there.
know. There's got to be some kind of line there, man. The Dialga attack is just so sick.
It is. I'm not. I mean, obviously, I'm
Yeah,
not
and I
disputing that.
mean you get to just do normal Lost Box stuff here still. So this kind of falls into the like we talked about this other. You just put whatever cards you want into Lost Box.
Hmm.
You're just taking out some of the more conventional attackers here for some Dialgas, basically.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I get it. Yeah.
What about you? Did you see anything that got you going?
Nothing really. Like I said, I've been mostly in my control hole for the
Hmm.
last week. I do like that Lugia basically has, unless something changes drastically at Orlando this coming weekend. I like that Lugia has basically got to that point where we thought what we saw with the Kansas and Cologne and the Skyla/Irida debate was where we were going to end up,
Hmm.
and that seems to be pretty like the standard at this point. Which I don't play Lugia a lot. It's not my favorite deck to play, but I like that version of it.
Yeah, I'm just pulling my list out now just to look through here because I'm at the point where I think for me personally there might be two flex slots in the entire list. Um, I guess like you have your choice between Heat Fire or Hiding Darkness Energy for your 15th energy card. Um, and then if you're like a Greed Ball, want to play a V Guard instead of one of your capture energies, you're allowed to be wrong. And then really like that's about it. Like you can make some arguments for how you want to make your Lugia account, but like I think there are basically two flex slots to mess with in the list plus the energy slots. And that's fine. I mean that's what happens as formats go on and get deeper in. Decks get optimized, the counters are all revealed, and then you have to, the deck that you were trying to counter gets to put its techs in. And I think that like the Irida thing really fixed so much for Lugia because what people had talked about early on was like, oh, there's going to be so many different counters and you can only prepare for so many of them at once. And what ended up happening is like, while that's true, if you play like Irida/Skyla, multiple Luminions, which multiple Luminions weren't bad either way, you only need one copy of each of the answers, and the answers aren't bad cards anyway.
Yeah.
So suddenly it's just not that bad. You can really be prepared for everything with reasonable access, and you don't even need to do anything crazy. So from there, it's just let's make sure our deck stays consistent because we're already doing the most powerful thing, and we've got this really compact answer engine. I think Lugia is in the best position it's ever been in. Funny enough.
Yeah, I do too. I do too. It's such a well-oiled machine.
Hmm.
I will shout out one thing that I thought was interesting, and like you've mentioned the Zamazenta, and it doesn't feel like Lost Box is really incorporating that as quickly as I thought we would. And then like we're even seeing some versions. Like I'm looking at one that this was at the I'm trying to find the tournament name. It was like that's the other thing is like usually we look at the 100 plus tournaments.
Yeah,
And
there was only one within the last week, I think.
yeah, but so I'm looking at the Pumpka Weekly, which was around I think 70 players or so, and this list got second, and it's a Skystone build, so it's playing the one Skystone, but it's weird because it's playing Dragonite and Raikou and Drapion and
Hmm.
Luminion. But usually when you're seeing Dragonite, you think, well, cool, Kyogre's there.
But
No,
no
and
Kyogre.
instead of playing Zamazenta, they're still playing two Snorlax, and they're only playing one Cram. It's it's weird. Like I don't necessarily. I don't know
Do
that I
they
mind
have the energies for Zamazenta? Or
no, but what
no?
if,
Okay.
no, that's what I mean. So they didn't even so like their energies is four water, three psychic, two lightning, and two capture. So
Oh,
oh,
I actually missed that list. Okay, so that's interesting. So it is the Kyogre deck, just without a Kyogre and with the a
correct.
Sky Stone. Huh.
Yeah, yeah,
That's an interesting take. I'm gonna pull that one up right now to take a look at it.
yeah, for sure.
Because that
Like
is like an interesting concept.
yeah,
Um,
I hadn't seen anyone do that yet where you're leaning so heavily into Snorlax and the V's that you're like I said, we talked about this whenever you were talking about even building like the turbo version of Lost Box, or when I was talking about building the Eternatus version, you're like,
right.
am I gonna miss Cram? And going down to one Cram here is a little bit cringe for me, especially in the place where you're gonna play two Snorlax. But
Yeah.
I don't know, like you could see where this could really shift certain matchups to really be in your like. I mean, taking three prizes with any of your V attackers is going to feel very strong, or four in the sense of Drapion against Mew VMAX. But I don't know. I'm intrigued enough to at least consider trying this.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is really interesting. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what all spots you get a lot of points with this. I mean, so Drapion and Skysteel we've already talked about. Obviously, that like your Mew matchup is now very good. And I guess the big thing here, normally when you talk about Lost Box having a good Mew matchup, you're using Kyogre to do the exact thing we're talking about Skysteel Stone doing. I guess take 4 prizes, so you get to skip over the Roxanne issue. And so this is definitely interesting. Raihan is a card that like I've liked in Lost Box conceptually and have not loved in practice, and this list looks pretty reliant on it. Especially when you're going to use only one choice belt to go with your Snorlaxes. Like this seems like a deck that can get snowballed on by Lugia pretty easily if it like needs the chorus to be able to Mirage Gate the same turn that it would want to set up Snorlax, since it doesn't have like in that situation, I would almost want to play like Twin Energy and multiple choice belts so that I'm more reliably able to set up Snorlax, right?
Yeah, well, and so that's what confuses me, right? Is that you would assume that Snorlax is in there ostensibly for the Lugia matchup, but at that point, isn't like Dragonite or Raikou should theoretically be
Well,
the Stoutland answer, right? So I don't know.
yeah,
Why we need
I
two
don't
Snorlax then.
reliably like. I mean, you obviously know this already. Without the Skysteel Stone, though, the Raikou into Stoutland trade doesn't really get you anywhere.
Yeah, you're
Um,
no 100%. I'm just saying like you have answers there already
right, and
that
because we had
either
talked,
cost less or
Mhm.
can actually one shot.
Yeah, because we were pretty off of the Snorlax kind of as soon as Dragonite became common, because
Yeah.
it already is doing the Stoutland thing very well, and it's a little bit bulkier than the Raikou is. Not a ton, but enough that your opponent has to commit a little bit more resources to deal with that one.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. This is interesting. I would give this a try. I guess I'm just not in love with the look of it.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, it's just I like seeing even a slight tweak from what I think the norm is,
Yeah,
and
this just
seeing a
looks
version.
clunkier to me. I guess it just kind of looks like you clunked up Lost Box and at the like you wanted to not play Kyogre, so now you're playing Drapion and Skyseal Stone to achieve that.
Yeah, I mean, it does have the added benefit of something that you really hate in the sense that it's not playing like the energy recyclers, and it is like
Yeah,
it's
Zero Recycler is nice.
yeah. I don't know. I like I said, I'm not necessarily certain that this is
I
the
mean,
way I
definitely
would
a lot
go.
less
It's
energies. That's fair.
yeah, yeah, which is something you're always a fan of, but I don't know.
I am, but like I don't really feel
To what
like
end?
well, and like when you're cutting them in Lost Box, like after playing it a ton again, like I do like Raihan a lot conceptually, and I'm a big fan of playing one a lot of the times, um, because there's just enough spots where you can just keep it off of a search and then hold it for like a really pivotal turn. But multiples function very similarly in that same aspect, where like I mean, you can only play one supporter a turn. Your deck digs through a lot of cards. There are a lot of spots, like I mentioned, where you have to chorus for a turn. So like other supporters do come with a huge opportunity cost. Um, and the Raihan, to your point, is trying to be a pseudo energy recycler here because you don't need the energies in your deck as much, but you do need to still be able to accelerate energies.
Yep.
So, I feel like they're functioning very similarly. Um, but yeah, I mean, you do get to play less energies, which is cool. I actually really love 3 capture energies in these decks, just as like a small thing that I'll point out. That card is just so good with Comfy.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
no, it's hard to argue that card's broken.
yeah, just
Like it
insane.
is. Yeah.
But
Uh,
I mean, yeah, it's an interesting list. Though I really like the like innovation to keep messing with Lost Box and trying different stuff in here.
I mean, we found that as much as you're a Mew bro, and I'm not on your level, but I do like it a lot. I feel like the deck that's always going to bring us back to experimenting is some version of Lost Box.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
you can
yeah,
just do so many things.
yeah. That's the thing. It's always very open. Have you noticed? Just looking at this event, it made me think of it. There's been a ton of Eternatus popping up now, and there's like 2 pieces to that, I guess, because like in my personal playing, there's a ton of it, but that's because they gave you Eternatus for free on PTCG Live. But I've even seen more of it on PTCGO events too. Have you caught that as well?
Yeah, so it's funny. So whenever taking, because I kept track of all my matchup records when I was playing the
The
Pikachu
Pikachu
control
deck.
deck, and Eternatus was the deck I played the second most. I played it 8 times out of 60, which is
Yeah,
to me absurd. I like,
that's that's a big meta share for Eternatus. Like,
yeah, the only deck I played against more was oddly enough Lugia, where I played 11 times. But the fact that it was even that comparative was like,
right, and to that point, both those decks are given to you if you've been playing since the beta release on live. You did get both those decks for free.
Yeah, that's true.
Um,
That's true.
I mean, Lugia would probably be up there either way. Like people would have crafted it, but Eternatus was just handed to everybody.
Yeah, that's true. But like, I mean, and I get you're right. I'm assuming that people come through with a collection and then they're able to craft like lost box cards because they're all like until recently they're all
Yeah,
like
yeah.
free cards. But yeah, I don't know. It's I don't really think the deck is good,
When I think the
but
deck got a lot worse, right? Like we just talked about it. Lugia is ready with the cologne. They can
yeah,
turn off your wheezing and then go off, and you don't really trade well with them once they go off,
no, I
right?
don't.
Like
Yeah,
I mean,
anytime they're able to use a Yveltal to knock out an Eternatus and take 3 prizes, like
well, yeah, that's the. I mean, bare minimum, you either cologne or boss around the coughing or the wheezing the turn you set
that's
up,
what I mean.
and
Yeah,
then you kill something, you boss a Crobat, and then you Yveltal the Eternatus. Like the prize mapping is really easy, and I mean, if you're just going to proactively Luminion to add either a boss or the Irida to your hand, right? And now you're just smooth sailing.
yeah. I think the cologne development should have made that deck significantly worse because it's like we always say about Path, like, and like obviously Wheezing is better than that because it turns off uh
Hmm.
the Archeops throughout the game. But like if you've loaded up a Lugia and they're just sitting in the front with a Wheezing, it doesn't matter if my Archeops is
Yeah,
alive.
well, that's. I mean, I mentioned Cologne, but like worst case, like they don't have to be especially proactive. They just let you do your thing, and when it's time for them to go off, they boss up the Eternatus, power up a Yveltal, and then just kill it after they've
Yeah,
manually attached up to something else. They can just keep killing Weezings, right? Like
yeah.
that game's just over.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm confused by its emergence as it is. So I hope that the like I was a proponent of that deck like 3 or 4 weeks ago because that was like when Mew was at its like second meta share, and I thought they could
Yeah,
play
there was
Mew
a
well.
point where that was definitely relevant, but even like Mew has a ton of inbuilt answers as well, right? Like they
Yeah,
get to cross switcher, they have multiple bosses. I don't know. I mean, it is a lot better against Mew. Mew has a hard time hitting for 340, and the Eternatus eats
yeah.
the Mews. No, for sure, a lot better against Mew.
And like before we made the adaptation of having stuff like
Yeah, I
Cologne,
agree.
or like when like even earlier whenever most people were on Serena, like I don't know, but I think at this point that deck should just be phased out.
Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you there. I guess was there anything else from online results you want to talk about, or do you want to just kind of talk about decks that we would, or talk about Orlando rather?
I think it makes sense to move on to Orlando because I think that the meta is no, I don't want to say completely defined, but like at this
Mhm.
point, I feel like if there nothing's news going to emerge from Crown Zenith until like a bigger event, and that's kind of what we're looking forward to.
Yeah, I think people need to see stuff before any other changes are made. And as we talked about when we like previewed the set or reviewed the set, I guess whatever way you want to word that, there's just not that many cards. So, all right, sounds good. Well, let's get into some predictions and what we play and what we think the meta is going to look like.
Yeah, about Orlando, do you think that we're in to see something like basically what we've been seeing the whole time, or do you think that is there anything new that you think, or like something that's been underexplored that you think could maybe pop up?
No, I don't think there's anything underexplored, barring someone breaking it with Radiant Eternatus. Whether there's like a better list of Malamar or if Shadow Rider's better than we've experienced. I mean, I think that's the only thing that has a chance to break it. Um, I don't think. Do you think we're going to see any Lugia innovation that we haven't seen at this point? I have a hard time imagining anything.
Yeah, I don't think so either. Just because like I get like obviously people on this side of the world can be a little bit more creative at times, but they've had Zenith in Japan for a while, and their Lugia decks are basically where we are. So
Yeah, no, Lugia hasn't really changed at all. And I mean, the only thing, really from the Japanese meta that we know of, or that we've seen have a lot of impact is the Zamazenta and to a lesser extent the Skyseal Stone, right? So we kind of know what we're going to see change from that perspective. Do you think we'll see any Lost Box kind of adopting the more metal heavy engine at this event, or do you think
I
that's
wouldn't be
kind of
surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if Zamazenta found its way into things, but anything beyond that, I don't. I don't buy into the.
the
I,
Zacians or anything like that?
no, I don't. Maybe like, and I'd love to be wrong because I think the Zacian stuff is kind of cool. It's just
Mhm.
Lost Box at this point, like especially like unless it's going to be something completely like rocks, like that has also a Lugia counter. I like, you know what I mean? Because that's the issue, right? Is that I think that all of the stuff you could do maybe makes other matchups better, but the matchup you're still worried about is Lugia, and the
Right.
metal stuff doesn't really fix that other than Zamazenta.
Right. Which also is for like a specific piece of Lugia that you could justify, Snorlax and Choice Belts being a more apt answer for.
Yep.
Um, I mean, I think there obviously is the upside that you don't have to play Choice Belts. The Zamazenta just does the thing, and there's
Hmm.
other spots where its math is a little bit better. Snorlax has its upsides too, obviously, but that card's more clunky and awkward. And the obviously we've talked about this before, but already having the metal energy is you're that close to putting Amazing Raikou in your deck and stuff like that, which is just a really good card.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
So like, I think we're still going to see like the version that we've seen play with Rayquaza like remain the most dominant version because it's the one that also most easily fits the
the
Zamazenta in.
Zamazenta into it, yeah. I guess let me ask this of you, because we've talked about all of these versions a million times already. Are you at a point where like you feel one is strongly better than the other?
Mm, I don't I don't know. I think they're very close. So I guess it just depends. Like, if you think the meta share is going to remain the same way that it is, I think I prefer the Rayquaza one because of Raikou. But if Kyogre fits Raikou in, then I think I would probably move back to there. I love like if you're telling me that Lugia and Lost Box are going to be the two most played decks, which I think they likely will be,
Yeah,
then I really like what Rayquaza can do into
it's good in both matchups in certain
yeah,
spaces or
yeah, and then like
situations.
Reiku's very good, and then if you're going to fit in like something else, I don't know. I think that it just does what it wants to do the most often. I think that the Kyogre version is probably better at handling some more of the nonsense that's
Hmm.
out there. So if you think that like maybe the meta share for the other decks come down just enough that you're going to play more nonsense throughout the tournament, then I think I would probably lean towards that one.
Interesting. Okay. I think I lean towards if I was going to play Lost Box, playing a Kyogre variant.
I think I would
Um,
too, as to be honest. I just whatever.
yeah, it's felt more resilient to the hand disruption and stuff, which is
Mhm.
a big thing, obviously. Um, and I've found that the Kyogre endgame plan is very good, obviously, but it's very tough to say. So I guess the wild card for me, and I haven't played enough of this matchup with either deck, is kind of the emergence and continued like increase in meta share of Lost Gudra, which I assume will be one of the higher played decks. And if you count that into like Lost Box representation, because it is another comfy Mirage Gate deck, that Lost Zone is going to take up a giant chunk of the meta share. But I think Gudra is unique enough that I would separate it.
Yeah.
But do you have any sense of one of these versions being better against Gudra? The best way, I have not played the matchup at all with the Rayquaza version, so keep that in mind. But at least
I
with
did. Yeah.
yeah, at least with Kyogre, you're able to get it onto their bench and just kill it with Kai.
Hmm.
Still not a great matchup. They can recycle their mana fees and they kind of put you in check every turn that you can't handle the mana fee off their bench, which is an interesting puzzle to solve. But that's you know kind of my perspective because Star Alchemy is not Star Alchemy, whatever the healing thing is. Star Alchemy is
Moisture Star.
Moisture Star, yeah, is really really hard for you to clear the gap against, especially
Hmm.
when like your way to kill it would be to double switch it and then nuke it with a Rayquaza, right? Like that's the only way for that deck to get around it.
Yeah. 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 I found that matchup to be miserable whenever I played against it last week,
Yeah,
and
that was my impression without playing it.
yeah, it's like you can win, and the issue is that I was able to kill one eventually,
Mhm.
but I was never able to kill the second one, and
Right.
at, I mean, at that point, like, what are you doing? And
Well, and you're in the blender with those Roxannes if people play Stefan's build at that point.
he was not, but yes, it could be. Yeah, that's. I mean, then you're never doing it. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think that that's another reason why I think I would lead. When I was mentioning the nonsense, like it's probably unfair, or depending on how you feel, fair or unfair to list Gudra in the nonsense pile at this point because it is. I mean, it is seeing an increased representation, and like we said, it just did come. There was what two in the top eight, one in second place, but like I don't think Gudra's amazing, but I do think it's going to see a
Well,
decent
now
amount of
I'll give
play.
you this one. I don't know exactly where they pull these stats from for the online meta shares, but it is listed as 17.5% of the online meta, the second most played deck.
That's horrifying.
Yeah, I mean, it is currently only slightly less popular, about 5% less popular than Lugia. Significantly more popular, well, also about 5%, 4%, I guess, than other Lost Box variants.
Well, if that's the case, then I'm happy I'm not going to Orlando this weekend because trying to thread the needle between Lugia and like those are like I just feel like
I
it's
mean, you just
such.
play Lugia, right? Lugia is good against Gudra. You can build your Lugia deck with answers to all of the
Yeah,
nonsense.
yeah,
The Lost Box matchup is like 50-50. Like, you just play Lugia.
yeah. I'm speaking as somebody who does not enjoy playing Lugia. I would not like to
Sure.
go there, but you're right. Yeah. Well, I mean, in that vein, I think that there's a realistic chance that it's probably like three Lugia in the top eight, one or two Gudra in the top eight, and I mean, again, fill out your rest with maybe a Lost Box or two, a Mew or two, and then maybe pick a random deck that finds its way through. But I think Lugia is coming out on top.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's a US event, so Reggie's is going to top. It doesn't matter if the deck sucks or not. Like, Reggie's are going to top. It's a US event.
I mean, okay, but you say that, but if like all jokes about how we feel about it aside, its Gudra matchup is literally unwinnable.
Completely
So
unwinnable, and that's a great
if
point with the meta share of Gudra. But decks that have a terrible Lugia matchup, Gudra, are topping events. Like, it doesn't matter if you have one awful. Like, you're playing the matchup lottery. You're playing the matchup lottery every time you sign up with any deck that's not like legit unbeatable.
you're right.
That's just how. And even if that matchup is like unwinnable, sometimes they break. We talked about that a lot too. Like, you have to get lucky to win a tournament. So
That's true.
there's
Well,
not
those
like,
people can play it. Good for them.
yeah. I mean, you should just not play it. But it's a US event. Reggies are going to top. It'll just happen. I've learned my lesson.
That's true.
I mean, Mew, another deck that's good against Gudra, a deck that has a decent matchup against non-Drapion Rayquaza lists. I mean, the fact that some of the Rayquaza lists could be playing Drapion and Skyseal Stone might take me off Mew a little bit.
I think Mew's going to do very poorly this weekend. And I think that a decent chunk of that is going to be due to underrepresentation. But
You don't think that winning the last regional 2 weeks ago has any positive impact on people playing it?
no, because I think so many name players in America are saying that Sky Seal Stone is the death knell to it. So unless they're like trying to like what's the term is now escaping me now that
Yeah,
I
like
got
meta
meta manipulation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So unless they're doing that, if they're not playing it, and then if enough people that listen to them take it to heart and then don't play it, like I could see that
You
go
think
from
the
being
play
like,
rate's going down even more?
I do, and
Okay.
so I think that that's going to hurt it so significantly. Like I think the deck is still very good, but if the play rate's that far down, it's going to be very tough for me to see it squeaking in.
That makes sense. I sort of feel like there's a lot of like decent players, not grinders, not people who are like deep in the weeds, but like solid Pokemon players that do keep up and play somewhat regularly that have just kept playing Mew and will continue to play Mew basically no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
So you're never going to see that deck outside of like a top 5 representation.
That's true.
It's pretty much guaranteed for top 4, I guess, if you separate like Lugia, Gudra, other Lost Box variants, Mew. I just don't think there's any chance Mew isn't in that top 4, and I would bet paper is stickier than online as far as people changing decks goes. I would bet Mew is still top 3. I would bet Gudra is solidly 4th place.
Okay, that's fair. I mean, if that,
the online metagame, it's funny because I give you the stat to say how frequent Gudra is around, and then tell you the exact opposite about what I would predict IRL. But I do actually think that because decks are just stickier in real life, people play the same deck. People bitch out a decent bit too, where it's like, ooh, I could change decks, but it's like, ooh, I've been playing this one for so long, I know what I'm doing with it, like, which is totally respectable, especially like, depending on what your goals are. So like I think Gudra will be the 4th most played deck. I think that'll still happen, and I could be wrong just based on how insanely popular it is online right now, but I just doubt it. IRL decks are just so much stickier to me. I just have a hard time believing that Gudra is going to be just overtaking the metagame share there. That being said, that still would be a reason for me to avoid decks that are really bad against Gudra, personally, because I just don't think you need to make that choice. So we've already said that we think Lugia is like the best deck to play, right? What do you think the second best choice is then? Do you think it's Gudra if you're beating up on these other Lost Box variants? Is that if so you feel like Mew is going to drop out on play rate? With that in mind, do you think that Gudra is the second safest deck to play then?
It could be, right? Because that's the other matchup it struggles in, but I don't know. It's so tough for me to pick against the Kyogre box. So I think that that's where I'd end up going, but I think it's right there with Gudra because, like I just said about Kyogre handling the nonsense, Goo is
Gudra
very
doesn't
good
lose
at.
to nonsense.
No,
That's
like
one
I
of
mean, it
the
just
high
wrecks it.
points of
So
Goo. Yeah, you're this really tanky deck doing decent damage. You do not lose to stupid cards.
yeah,
Um, it doesn't really fit into the game plan. Goo, another deck that you could feasibly play Zamazenta in. You already played the energies for it. I don't know that I feel it needs that line, but because your Guj already is handling the things you want Zamazenta to handle.
yeah.
Um, but just like throwing that out there, I guess, is another point. I think with the way things have gone, Duraludon is just like a dead deck to me. Do
I
you
like
do you feel that, or are you kind of in disagreement there?
um it bites both ways, right? I thought that deck was dead the entire time and it still sees play. Because like some people, like you just said, some people are just going to play it no matter what.
Yeah, no, for
Um
sure.
I've not thought that it's had a good place in the meta the entire time and it's still somehow found a way. But
I
like
just think
with
it has too many bad matchups now. I don't think
oh, and
Lugia is
especially
good even.
now that Lugia plays Cologne and like the thing to search it, it's just like
Yeah,
that
every
seems
Lugia deck
unwinnable.
has ways. I mean, like the way the decks are constructed now, they have the clone and the loss or the choice belt, so they can always one shot with all their powerful colorlesses, and they have the lost vacuum and Yveltal. Like there's
Yep.
the deck just easily kills two Duraludons.
Yeah,
I
I don't see a world where that's going to be a
I
deck that
don't
I would
either.
ever end up signing up
You
with.
you couple that with how inherently like sketchy it is, just no thank you. And
Yeah.
I mean, it's even worse against Rayquaza Lost Box than it is against other like that. That was the spot where it was getting points, right? That it
It
was
was
good
Lost
against
Box and now
Lost
it's just
Box.
not.
It's not good
Yeah.
against Rayquaza, and Dragonite mostly solves the matchup. It doesn't like
Yeah.
100% clear the gap, but it does a
It
lot.
does a good bit.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
does a lot. And I don't really know how you can ever justify playing the deck then if you have like I don't know. I haven't played Gudra versus Dura, but just like quick head math, I think Gudra trades positively.
Even if it doesn't, like I feel like at best that's a tie every time you guys play.
Yeah, those games are going to be slow and clunky, but I think Gudra just kills it in a couple attacks,
Yeah. Yeah. And
and
well,
Gudra
yeah, so
takes significantly less. Plus, you get to Moisture Star heal all the damage off of one of
yeah,
them.
Gudra has more healing and only gives up two prizes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
would
see a
assume
world where
so.
that like I guess that's the tanky deck. If you wanted to play something thick, you play Goo.
No, you play Control Pikachu. Ah,
We're
like
gonna get there. Don't worry, because I assume that's what you would play.
no, it's not. It's not. So I came away after a week that I think that deck is better than I initially thought because it does play almost exactly like what you did with the last deck he played. Not the last one because
So
the last one was the
this is the spiritual successor of the LAIC Sander deck that
yeah
had like the first time he threw Quad Evital into a deck and didn't really have anything unique going on here. It's just like a pile of answers.
yeah. Pikachu is theoretically better than Ice Q is. So if like I don't I like it, it's just easier for you to play that into things. Regieleki is very good for your game plan.
Right.
So I don't know. Like it's just if you thought that I didn't think that that deck was necessarily well positioned since Toronto anyway.
Yeah. Well, and
So
I've felt pretty strongly that Mewtwo variants of Control were better anyway.
yeah.
Also,
So like I don't know. I think the deck's it's better than I thought it was when I first looked at it and went, "What are you playing?" But I still think at best it's like the sixth or seventh best deck in the format, and
mm.
so no, it's not what I would play, but I do like it more than I
If
thought.
that was if you were gonna play Control, is that the variant you would take, or would you take some sort of Mewtwo V Union deck?
I don't know. Because like is I think that with Drapion, like I assume people will still play Drapion, even though
Mm.
like Mew's dropping, but like so it's one of those things. But like I think people will play because they say, well, it catches two matchups at worst. So if Drapion's still seeing play, no, I would not play because like
Well,
Mewtwo
and
Union.
to that point, like that's a putting the cart before the horse kind of situation. If you can tell yourself like, oh, Mew should drop off because Drapion and Skystill Stone kills it, we're not going to play Drapion because people shouldn't play Mew. Suddenly, like, it makes sense that Mew would be good again. So it's like,
Yep.
you can't, like, I don't feel like you can confidently make that call going into this event at least.
No, and that's what I'm saying. So like, since I'm not confident making the call in either direction, I just wouldn't play it.
Right.
So
That makes sense.
So yeah, but I guess if I was going to play one, it would be that, because if I'm right in my initial thought process
Mhm.
about like the Mew drop off, so like if I am like I like that, and this is, you'd have to tie yourself into pretzels to play control right now if you're not Sander, and I think that's the issue.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense as well. The deck is like good, it's fine, but I mean, you're signing yourself up for a rough time.
And just really hoping that the match, like, I mean, more than any deck probably in this room, hoping that you hit the matchup lottery.
Right, exactly. And that's terrifying. I don't like doing that, and that's why it's like, yeah, I agree completely. I think the other deck that like really is like a strong consideration. I don't think either of us would play it because we're not practiced with it, but I mean, Vikavoid is still good, right? And it still is like, very present and strong. I mean, the Dactyl line wins less against Lugia now, but you're still putting them on a 1-turn clock, right? They have to answer it that turn, or you start item locking them.
Yep.
So, it's not like free. I mean, it's a lot.
No, I think it's good.
It's a lot different from Wheezing Eternatus in the sense that like you get 1 turn to deal with it. Against Wheezing, they don't really pressure you that quickly, and it's just not that serious. You get several turns to figure it out. I mean, you have 1 turn from when they Aerodactyl you. Yeah, if you go first, like, you are probably okay. Maybe they item lock you turn 1, and that's enough if they're going second. But if you're going first again, or if they're going first against you, I mean, you have exactly 1 turn before you're checkmated, and that's horrifying.
Yeah, I like, whenever I like, it has the opposite, but like similar explanation. Like, I think that deck's like I said about Mew, I think the deck's very good. I don't know if the representation will be high enough, but I do think that if like any number of, like, I could see like most of them converting, because you don't really, like, other than the Cologne, you don't play counters to that deck. You're just hoping you don't hit it, and you hope they don't draw well. So like I think that could be that last deck that I think sneaks into a top 8 slot, because I do think it's very good.
Yeah,
I've liked that deck
I
for
would
a
not
while.
be surprised at all to see that in a top 8 spot, and I think that's a very reasonable guess.
I guess my question is, at this point, we've regularly said that we think either Mew or Lost Box are the second best deck in the format. Are we close to saying that Vikavolt is? It's, in terms of results, it's.
I mean, it clearly
it's
is
just
the
clear
second
as-
most accomplished deck in the format.
You think it's close to being the second best generally, though?
That's a hard question to answer. I mean, history will certainly say that it was the second best deck. That's obviously being results oriented, but it in a lot of ways has been dominant, and through multiple variants even.
Yep.
So it's certainly hard to deny Vika. And I think, the more you talk up Lost Box, the more you're talking up the second matchup that Vika's really good against, right? Like, we're talking about decks that play 30 item cards and need to pivot comfies around. I mean, so if you go from thinking debatably Lost Box is the second best deck, and then you're like, well, how are you ever going to put Vika down here as the 4th, 5th, whatever best deck in that situation when it can just devour Lost Box and Lugia? So I guess, from having that quick talk, probably Vika is probably the second best deck. I think the other thing that might make that a little screwy, again, is the emergence of Gudra, because you can just hard equip to it before the Vika really threatens you, and now you're in the driver's seat.
Yeah, because even like in other matchups where the Reiku is good, or the, like, at that point, like, I think in the Gudra matchup, you end up having to attack with Aerodactyl V-Star a lot for like 2 shots,
right,
and just lost zoning the top. That sounds awful.
Yeah, and you only have one of those, and that doesn't trade all that well. I mean,
no,
it doesn't trade terribly.
No, you 2-shot each other and they get the heal. So
yeah, and then their heal's back online, and
so
you're back in the how does my Vika whatever kill Gudra, right? So, I mean, that would be the one thing to me that kind of pushes it down in a little bit out of the metagame if we're predicting, top four meta share for Gudra, which is where I would say it'll be. That is rough for Vikavolt, but I think Vika is still the deck I'd be the second most likely to play, just because it is good against two of the top three decks that I would predict or top four, I guess. I can't confidently say Gudra will be fourth, but in representation, it's definitely good against two of them. The Mew matchup, in my experience, is kind of coin flippy. Like, if Mew goes first, it's very hard for them to lose, but if Mew bricks at all and you start attacking, the game is over. You've won. Congratulations. So, kind of coin flippy there. Strongly favored against both Lugia and, at the very least, Kyogre box, I assume. Another matchup I've never played is the Rayquaza player. My rank is too low on live. I play against a lot of nonsense. But like it seems favored against half of the. I mean, so like you talk percentages, right? Like over 10% of the room, I assume, will be Lost Box variants, non-Gudra Lost Box variants, and then over 25% of the room is Lugia. You're strongly favored against at least a third of the room.
I would think so.
At least 50-50. If we give Mew another roughly 10%, suddenly we're almost a half of the room that we have 50% or better matchups against.
Yeah, it's very well.
I wouldn't be surprised if like Vikavolt wins the spreadsheet. I'm not doing one right now since we're not going to the event, but I wouldn't be surprised if Vika wins the spreadsheet.
Yeah, no, I could definitely see that. So final prediction: what do you think is going to win the event? I know that's
same deck I've predicted every event this format. It'll be Lugia.
Big old Lugia. Yeah, I think so too. I think that
I hate doing that because it's such a cop out. How do you pick any other deck when we're saying like it has the out? Like I'm saying Vikavolt's favored against it, but like I don't know how favored it is anymore. It's very slightly favored at best, right?
Yeah, so if it's a 55, are you really going to pick against Lugia where you think it has the best matchup?
Yeah, when Lugia beats everything else and Lugia auto wins every game that Vika bricks it all. Like, how do you
put it like that?
Right, like it's not like some decks can play like this is one of the nice things about Lost Box. You can brick and play like a grindy, goofy game. You're giving up one prize a turn, who cares? And like get set up and find your answer because you have like 4 prize swing plays in your deck. And like Vika doesn't have that. So if you stumble against Lugia, you lost. The game's over. Again, I still wouldn't be surprised if just like purely from a percentage standpoint, Vika would win the spreadsheet. Like that just might have the best expected win rate against the field. But I would have to assume Lugia wins the event. I actually just feel like the deck is so optimized at this point, and if people like, you can easily slot a switch card into your deck, whether that's playing like a Bird Keeper or just a regular switch to get with your Skyla/Irida. Like, so you can prepare for that counter because I feel like that's something we haven't actually touched on. Lugia is basically not playing switch at all anymore. So there's room for Palkia Articuno to make a resurgence. But if you like want to get ahead of it, you can just put the switch back in. There's enough space for it. We talked about there's like 2 flex slots in the deck. Use them to not lose that matchup. So
it's pretty easy.
I don't see a world where Lugia isn't the most well positioned deck at this point. It's so optimized, it's so strong, and you have a good game plan everywhere. Any disagreement there? Do you feel like that's the obvious prediction for deck that wins the event?
I think so. I think that it's always going to be the safest pick. It's always going to be the front runner. So
yeah. And I mean, I'm not at the spot where I would predict like 4 in Top Cut like we were for a while. I think like 2 copies probably.
Yeah.
3 on a really good day. It cannibalizes itself a little bit is part of the problem. But like there's a lot of decks that are well prepared for it. There's a lot of top players that won't play it, which factors into that decision for like a US event as well. I feel like I would probably be less likely to pick Lugia to win in NA than I would be abroad, just because we have so many of the best players who love playing Lost Box here. And
well, there's a reason why it's only one regional here so far, so it's not like that kind of dominant.
Right.
But it's those meta shaping.
Well, and I mean, really, it's funny because we're saying it hasn't won. It's won less events than Vikavolt, I think, actually.
Yep.
I mean, top 8 percentages, it's still dominated, and part of that's the aggressive, almost overperformance at LAIC, but I don't know that I want to say over. That was probably what it deserved that weekend. But I mean, you still have to pick it, right? That's still the safest deck. That's still the best deck in the format, and that's, I mean, what I would pick to win the event. What about you? You're same page then? All aboard on that?
Yep. Yeah, I think that unless unless the elite North American testing groups that we regularly talk about have cooked something up that we have not seen coming. I
Hmm.
think that I think, like you said, Lugia's too optimized at this point. I'd be surprised if it didn't win the event.
So, what would your second pick be then? Since we're both locked in on Lugia, I'm curious to see what you think the second most likely deck to win the event would be. Like, let's just say we can give you a second vote since the Lugia answer is too easy.
While it's not what I would play, I think it would be Go. I think that just basically how we described that matchup ladder and how it would turn out, like it just if it hits the right matchups, or like I mean we saw it be able to handle Lugia in certain situations. Like I don't that
Mhm.
matchup's not favored, but you can win the matchup.
Mhm.
I think Gudra's just I don't think it's like you said. I think it's maybe the fourth or fifth best deck, but I think it's very well positioned coming into this specific weekend. That I think that you could see it take that win.
Yeah, I definitely can see that and embrace that. I would take Vika Void as my second pick.
That's fair. I
Um,
mean,
it
it's
just
dominant.
yeah,
So
it's been dominant. If it hits the right matchup, same thing. There's a lot of good spots. If it wins some dice rolls in key spots, it can just steamroll through a top cut. Um, and again, like you're putting your opponent in check on turn two so often,
mhm.
and that's a really good spot to be in. Um,
I guess that brings us to the real question: are we just bad because every week we play? We who sit here and take ourselves very seriously in how we do and want to play the best deck possible. We picked 3 different decks to win the event, and it's not Lost Box, which is the only deck we really play all that often. So
uh, okay, well, part of that is a circumstance issue for me. I've had Zach play my Lugia cards for
that's
basically the
true.
entire format. I, I mean, I keep up with my Lugia stuff a lot. I mess with it a decent bit. I play probably, I don't know, occasionally. I played a couple games yesterday online with Lugia even. Um, but yeah, so I mean, there's just not a lot to do with your Lugia list. We just touched on it. I
Yeah.
think there's 2 flex slots plus like you can make some energy changes. What am I gonna do at this point by continuously grinding Lugia? I don't think the mirror is even all that intricate. There's not a ton of reasons for you to just like keep playing it to figure out the best way to win it. I mean, you kind of just have to map your games out as you go and figure out where your opponent's going to let you take like multiple prize shots. But I think there's a lot of in-game decision making there, and not a ton of like high level. I need to grind this matchup to better understand it.
Yeah.
So I just don't feel like at this point there's a ton of upside in playing Lugia, but we talk about you can play, 5 different cards in your Lost Box deck and totally change the way the games work. So that's why we've been playing a ton of Lost Zone, I think.
Yeah, that makes
Um,
sense.
so we think Lugia would win. Have we decided? Have we asked what we'd play already?
I I don't know if we asked it directly, but yeah, go ahead. What would you play this weekend? Because I
Uh,
think we're actually going to end up answering the same thing.
yeah, I think we would too. I'd play Kyogre Box.
Me too.
I'm well practiced with it. I do think Lugia is the best choice, but frankly, I have a lot of fun playing Kyogre Box, and I think that's where I would go. Um, I also want in on the if I happen to spike the event, I can tell everybody that I'm super smart the same way Grant and Azul have been doing, and I would really enjoy being a person who sniffed my own farts for a day.
You know, it's hard to argue with. It's impossible. That article was legendary by Grant, and by legendary I mean I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that.
One of the most likable people in the game really did his hardest to make people not like him. I agree.
Yep. So on that note, we will call it here for the week. We will be back next week to discuss the results of Orlando. If there's any news between now and then, speaking of which, if you're a fan of PTCGO over PTCG Live, RIP. But
Yeah, March 1st, no more PTCGO. Or I guess it's staying up. I think no more sets will be added after Crown.
yeah, it exists. It's just
Yeah.
you're not optimizing your way
Well,
of playing.
eventually the servers will have to go down too. There's no reason to leave them up long term.
Yeah, which man, that's gonna ruffle a lot of feathers because the
You
people
love
that like
slash
play.
hate to see it, depending on your perspective.
Well, even if I'm being nice, the people that like to play other formats, like GLC or something like that, is just not an option on PTCG
Yeah,
Live.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know. Have they talked about are there plans to backfill the catalog, or it just is
There's
what it
not.
is?
No, they say this is it.
You can play on. I think it's TCG1 that people play the real retro formats on.
Yeah, that makes
That's
sense.
also like literally free. Quit complaining.
Well, people love to complain, Dave.
As a avid whiner, I get it. This
Yep,
is a stupid one.
yep. But that'll do it for us. So we will catch you next week. Definitely like, rate, subscribe, follow, review, all of that stuff on wherever you get your podcasts or on YouTube.
Yep, yeah.
If you're
Check
watching
us
us on
out there
YouTube,
as well. Corey's face was here the whole time this week. I apologize for everyone's loss, whichever way
me
you want to
too.
take that. But, it's been a pleasure, Corey. I'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Talk to you then.